right, welcome to the Warner's Ponds Management Committee. I'd like to call this meeting to order at 3 o'clock. So the first thing I would like to do is I sent out the minutes to everybody. And hopefully you've had a chance to look through them again, and any questions or comments about them?
Looks fine to me.
Yeah.
Okay,
Good
so
meeting.
motion to accept
I so moved.
Second.
and do we all agree? Can we just do it by
All in favor?
all, Nick?
I'm fine.
Aye, everyone?
Aye, everyone.
Carlene has her hand up as well, so
Aye.
motion to accept, excellent. Okay, the next item on our agenda is, we had talked about a clerk at the last meeting, and we felt that, well, we'll just pass it around every week. And then Carlene, so nicely volunteered to, be our clerk. And, yes, so.
For throughout the meeting or?
For
be our
permanent.
clerk.
Thank you.
So I assume that nobody has any issues with that?
Well, I don't know.
I forgot to take a roll call. So Carlene, hold that thought for 1 second. I'd like to take a roll call. Carlene, are you here?
Your voice has just cut out, Chris, and so I see you're speaking to me, but I can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? No?
I
Carlene,
I can see you now, and I can hear you now, and yes, I.
so you're here, Nick,
Here.
Alyssa? Here. Dan?
Yes.
Bill?
Bill, here. Here.
Bill?
Yep.
And I'm here as well, so we have a full house. Now we'll get back to the committee. So Carlene, it appears that nobody seems to be objecting to that wonderful opportunity that you gave to us. So do I have a motion to accept that Carlene is our committee clerk?
So moved. Second.
Okay, show of hands. It is unanimous. Thank you, Carlene. You are our clerk.
My pleasure. I'm very skilled and happy to take minutes, but I feel I am at a disadvantage today. And I was wondering if someone else could volunteer to take minutes today, and then I'll take it from here on in.
Fair enough. Do we have a volunteer?
Well, we have a recording, don't we? We have, it's being
We do. It's
recorded.
being recorded.
Do we need minutes?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
So
Carlene, can you do it from the minutes? I mean, from the recording?
I feel I am at a disadvantage not to be, and I'm not trying to shirk responsibility. I just feel like I'm at a disadvantage not being in the room. No one is willing to do this for this month. I will do it for all
I'll
other
do it.
months.
It will not be as detailed as Chris's. from
thank you
last
so much.
Meeting.
All right, so Alyssa will do the meetings for us, the minutes of this meeting. Thank you, Alyssa. Okay, that's solved. Now we're on to our procurement process with the finance department. I think we have Ryan here.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, thank you so much for joining us to share this process with us.
Sure, sure. Okay. Yeah. So, so is it all right to start?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Sure. Okay. Well, thank you for having me here today. My name is Ryan Ferrara. I'm the Assistant CFO and also Budget and Procurement Director. And with me today is, I think I saw her somewhere. There's Amanda. Okay. Amanda Moore, who is our Procurement Manager. So, we were asked to come to the meeting to kind of give you an overview of what some of the things that matter to you for procurement. As I understand it, and please feel free to correct me, that there is a dedicated pot of money that's been set aside for Warner's Pond for a study. So that will have to be, and the use of that money has to be done per Mass General Law. So, how big is the pot of money that we're talking about here? That at least in terms of the budget for this initiative, you're thinking?
Well, it's my understanding that from one of the CPA requests that it's I was under the impression it was $197,000.
Okay. I think that roughly corresponds with what I thought it would be. So, and are we thinking that in this instance that you'd be using the entire amount in terms of working with a consultant on this, or what is it that you're looking to get out of the roughly $200,000?
So in looking at this money, it would be for potentially for pond manager slash consultant. It would be for anything that in addition that we would need to spend money on, whether we have to spend it for
Mhm.
herbicides or whatever type of way that we go to apply anything to the pond.
Mhm.
Whether that, I'm assuming that that's all part of the almost $200,000 that we'll be able to use. And whether we use it all at once or over the course of the year.
Mhm.
So that's
Okay. So what would be the breakdown in terms of like the consultant versus the herbicides? So is there there must have been something presented to the CPC. I'm just trying to get a better understanding about what
so,
that,
okay, so
what those lines would be.
what was presented to the CPC was that the Warner's Pond, it was for Warner's Pond um,
Maybe try
Uh,
restoration.
restoration,
Yeah.
thank you so much, Warner's Pond restoration.
Mhm.
And that was used, part of the Warner's Pond Task Force used that money to for things that we needed within the task force, whether it was to get estimates or to get some reports done, we utilized some of that money. What was left of that request, that CPA request, was $197,000. And so
Mhm.
because this is still Warner's Pond restoration, we are applying it to the Warner's Pond Management Committee to be, so to speak, in charge of spending that
Mhm.
money.
Yeah. Okay. So roughly you have $200,000. So to be potentially, I would think that you'd be hiring the consultant who then would be probably helping you develop a budget from that in terms of what you'd want to do for, with that. Okay. Is that roughly speaking what the thinking is?
That
Yeah.
is correct. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Good. Good. Okay. All right. So why don't we start with the consultant side of things in terms of what you're looking at? Now, if I'm looking at your agenda, I think later on in the agenda there's an adaptive management plan. Is that basically what you're? And again, please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm kind of coming in late to this, so please have mercy. But is it is the development of those concepts, is that what you'd want to have the consultant help you flesh
So,
out?
so let me explain just a little bit more, okay?
Okay.
So from the Warner's Pond Task Force, the proposal was to form a Warner's Pond Management Committee. The
Hmm.
purpose of the committee is to come up with an adaptive management plan to manage Warner's Pond and in a way that we see fit. One of the suggestions that came out of that was to hire a pond manager or consultant.
Okay.
That's one option. And how we move from there is we need to, as a committee, create our adaptive management plan. Okay, we need to
Okay.
figure out what the issues are, how do we want to proceed, what makes sense. So that is our focus. So from the management plan, we will probably, which we need to discuss, are we going to be looking for support from a consultant, whatever, to help make
Mhm.
this happen?
Okay.
So that's kind of the progression of where we are. And so we're
Okay.
just
So
it's our second meeting.
Okay. So the adaptive management plan informs what the consultant will be doing. Those are kind of your goals
Correct.
and objectives, if you will, for
Correct.
mission statement or something like that. Okay.
Right.
So all right. So let's talk a little bit about on the procurement side, because this is public money, which means that in most instances that also then means that we have to go through the procurement process of having a publicly transparent process as to how these things are purchased. So in this instance, in terms of the consultant, does anyone have any sense about what, if you've had any quotes or what have you? Because, and the reason I ask is that at different thresholds, it's different processes that you'd follow. So,
So
is this going to, or simply put, would this be something probably over $50,000?
probably, yes.
Okay, okay. So if this is over $50,000, this service basically falls in under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 30B, and you have two options under that. One is that you could pursue an invitation for bids, and the advantage of an invitation for bids is that if you were buying, say, let's say you're buying widgets, and you just wanted to, get a series of quotations, formal quotations for the people to present sealed bids. They would then provide that to you, and you'd open it up, and you basically have to give it to the lowest responsive bidder, and the bidder who's also capable of doing that. So that's for more vanilla type procurements. But in this case, and it may be better suited for what you're looking for, is to do something more along the lines of a request for proposals. And in that instance, you would be you basically what they call a two envelope process, where you would have the bidders be able to speak to the criteria that you have in that bidding process. Say you'd like to be able, and you have to have things that are real metrics, like someone who has been involved with water mitigation plans for the last 5 years. So you may say that the person who's been doing it for between 5 and 10 years is considered to be excellent, someone, and you can basically have a ranking process from that and give them points from that. So you'd have essentially a matrix with that, where you would go out to bid, have people bid on it, and then there'd be a subgroup that I'm presuming would include some of the members from this committee, who would then come together and then kind of fill out and basically give values to each one of those different components, and then ultimately each party comes up with a score. So once you have that, then you have a ranking of the people that you've picked, and then after that, we separately, under a separate sealed envelope, have a price proposal. So, depending, and that sort of varies on each one, so that you're not forced in that instance to have to take the low bidder. You want to have someone that's going to be able to work with you, going to be able to guide you through your adaptive management plan and the goals that you've set forward in that, and really make sure that you have someone who's a good partner here in this instance. So, from what you've described so far, I would tell you that my recommendation would be that you should probably pursue a request for proposals in this, so that you really have a chance to bring somebody in that you think is best suited to your group's needs. So there's also separate posting requirements with that I'm not going to go into, but that's what Amanda and I are here for, to help you with that. But in terms of where you're at and what you'd be looking to do based upon the threshold that you're talking about, I would suggest that probably doing that again, that two-step process, where a request for proposals, where we develop a matrix for grading out each of the proposals that you receive, and then separately looking at the price proposal from that after the fact. But you do have more resources here in Concord between Amanda and myself than you would in a lot of other municipalities, where procurement was one of the many hats that I've worn. So you would have some support there, and us helping guide you through that. But I appreciate that, because it's important, and I appreciate you guys asking us to come here and to give this talk and have this conversation with you, such that we don't go too far down one path, and then all of a sudden we have an invoice we can't pay for. Following this process will be a good foundation for you, I think, to do all the other things that you want to do. So, that, like, say, if you're talking about chemical purchases, things like that. Under $10,000, it's just sound business practice. Between $10,000 and $50,000, it's a 3-quote process. And over $50,000 for Chapter 30B, that's where you fall into the same 2 processes that we just went
What
over
was the
with
middle,
the invitations.
what was the middle one you just stated between?
Sure. Anything between 10,000 and 50,000, then that's a 3-quote process.
Three
So
quotes.
you'd be reaching out to, say, if it was for chemicals, you'd be reaching out to vendors that typically provide that and get 3 quotes from that.
But that's if there is a separate request, if we've already hired a consultant.
Correct. Yes. I'm presuming that this is the consultant is the first of other requests that will be coming from this group in terms of other purchases that you'd want to make.
Right.
Could I just jump in for a minute, Ryan, if that's okay as well?
Sure, go ahead, man.
Hi, Amanda Moore. I'm the procurement manager. So usually how these will work is I would work directly with whoever your staff point of contact is. So that person would kind of be the liaison between the committee and our procurement team. The committee would develop the scope of what you were looking for. And then the town, we have standard forms that we use, like Brian had alluded to. There's 2-week-long posting processes and things that we need to follow. Once that was posted and we received those responses back, there would be an evaluation form and everything that, again, the town has that would be provided to you through your staff member to fill out. There would be staff involved on your evaluation team as well. Sorry, someone have a question?
I have some questions.
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, just a few questions, Dan Stapleton. So, this committee has approximately a 5-year charge, meaning it's going to go on for, probably 5 years, maybe longer, but
Yep.
Currently it's 5 years. And there are probably going to be 2 types of procurements that will occur over that time. One is consulting and the other would fall under contractor types of procurements. And I understand that the request for proposal option makes sense for the consulting part. And can that come from you mentioned pre-qualifications. Can you actually have a pre-qualified list? Or do you just have to provide minimum qualifications?
Typically, like within the RFP, you establish baseline qualifications for the bidders. So there really isn't a list per se, but you can't come up with something. You can develop a list that would say, if you don't meet these baseline criteria, please don't submit a bid.
Got it.
Yeah, and we have some examples. We just recently are in the process of doing one for our MCI master plan, and that is also being done by a committee. So we can share some examples if that would be helpful. I can get them to Rose.
That would be great.
If that would be helpful.
And my last question is there any thing that we should be thinking about relative to duration? So for example, let's say we did go out with procurement for a pond management consultant, but we also wanted them to be the monitoring agent. So that would be 5 years of monitoring once or twice a year. Would that have to be annually bid awarded? Can you go out for 5 years? How does that all work?
So typically, it's the restriction is usually a 3-year contract. So we do allow for some 1-year extensions. Actually, but generally speaking, and Amanda, correct me if I'm wrong, but basically, like we generally restrict it to 3 years.
Correct.
So
Without a vote of special town meeting, or of annual town meeting,
Yeah.
you're restricted to 3 years. So we
Okay.
could do a multi-year, but after that, it would have to be re-procured.
All right, thank you.
I will say, Dan, you do have an advantage in the sense that where it's CPA money, that money also carries forward each year, which is not the case with all of our buckets of funds. So as such, with the roughly 200,000 that you have, you have the right to that, over an extended period, multi-year period, basically. So that
I did have one other question, which is, and thank you, this has been great for me. This question's up, maybe even for Rose. If we utilize town resources for the execution of our work, So it's all internal town employees. Does that have to fit into a budget somehow? Like, do you have to dedicate 20 hours of GIS operator and that comes out of the budget, or how is that managed?
Hmm. I think I might be able to answer that one if I don't. So so the question would be, it really becomes a separate question to Public Works in terms of what they have available. So if there was any additional capacity here that would need to be added, and that becomes something we'd have to adjust to our operating budget to add staff, dedicated staff, or staff will be working for a portion on this project. So yeah, it doesn't work. So I don't know what conversations that you've had with CPW on that.
Well, yeah, I'll just frame it specifically, because it's not an abstract question. So the town of Concord has GIS staff. I think they have 3 people. They work out of the municipal light plant building, I believe. And so a lot of the activities we are going to do here as part of the plan and then the long-term monitoring would ideally be using GIS staff to support that. We also have Rose. I don't know how that's budgeted, but Rose is also a town resource. So it's not a matter of adding resources. It's like if we want 20 hours of a GIS person, does that get charged to this committee, or is that just like, hey, if they got the time to work on it, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think I might. I don't want to speak to that specifically, but I think that it's something you'd probably have to, you have Jeff, who's the IT director who manages that staff. I think that's probably a question between Jeff and the town manager as to, what, if any charges that they would have to that budget. So is it possible? Yes. But depending on the nature of the work, if it's something that's more, that isn't too significant a lift. I mean, typically departments try to help out in these circumstances where, as best they can without charging them. So.
I think it sounds like it's something that just needs to be, once we figure out what it is that we'd like to do, just to approach you and see how that would fit in. Okay, good.
I just want if the consultant that you're hiring can have that service, might be more straightforward to add that to the scope, certainly with GIS service, right? But
Yeah, there's a little complexity in how we would have availability of information licensing. So there are a lot of, I mean, in the town, the town has become a very active user of GIS for a lot of purposes. We're about to have a new enterprise fund for stormwater management. That's all GIS driven by that GIS staff. So this is conservation land management is now clearly falling into that category. So that's
So,
what we
yeah,
have.
so it sounds to me like as we approach that, we can figure that out a little bit more, so.
Yeah, and I'm also asking because I'm very sensitive to start moving some town taxpayer money into actually doing something on the pond and out of the consulting part that we could actually do ourselves, including town resources. That's some of the motivation.
Arlene, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you for recognizing me. Hi, Ryan and Amanda. Nice to meet you. I have a question that might be sort of premature, but since we have you here, I'd love to ask. So is it possible, Ryan, you half answered this. Is it possible that out of that 197K that we put aside some of that money for a future consultant? Because it is my impression that we employ a pond management company, but that at some point at the end of some period of time that we determine, whether that's 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, we need to assess the success of that pond management, and the pond management company can't assess itself. We need to assess the success of this before we move on and move forward and evaluate, the future of the pond. And so I think, would have to hire another consultant to come in and look at the work. Is that possible to put aside some money for that, knowing we're going to spend it, or would that be another request to the town? Hope I explained that.
Yeah. I think, Eileen, the way to think of it is that, you have $197,000 to spend. So I think, the first step is the consultant side of things. And then from that, it sounds like separately, you'd be talking about hiring, if not a separate manager or some service, to maintain the pond. So it could very well be two separate purchasing processes that you'd go under. Because I think that, the consultant has one set, who you're hiring for that consultant is one set of skills, an engineering background and what have you. But then, when you get into the actual treatment process, this may be, a whole different company. Now, I would imagine that there are some firms that do both, so I don't want to necessarily preclude that from happening. And you could structure your RFP like that, but that may be a little bit more research on your own and on the committee's end as to how to best structure that. Are there, what groups do the studies, what groups do the actual work? And then, but because I think that this could very easily be done as two separate
Yeah,
proposals.
I'm actually talking about evaluation of whether there's progress made in cleaning up the pond. But I think
Hmm.
it doesn't, that's just semantics at this point, but you've made it clear that if we put aside money for that, if we happen to choose to, that's okay. We're not on a timeline. Okay, thank you.
I think the other part of that too, Carleen, is that if we need more money, then I'm also hopeful that we could write a CPA request as well. I mean, we should be planning this out anyways, down the road so that we can look ahead and say, oh, it's a year's process to get CPA funds, that we could put together a request for that.
Absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah, and Carly, just to speak to your earlier point, I mean, you may have the consultant that you sign on for 3 years, who's giving broader guidance. That's in year one, year two, say, that's when you hire, the treatment company, and then a reassessment's done after that first cycle. With the consultant to say, we just did a year's worth of service on this,
Have we made
on the
headway?
pond. What does it look like? Do
Yeah.
we need to reorient what we're doing to better meet the needs of pond health?
Exactly. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Any other questions from anybody?
That's the way I see it playing out too. Consultant first, tell us what we need, what we can do.
The only add-on that I would really recommend is that we consider coupling the monitoring with the consultant. And then the monitoring, I don't think you need yet a third independent party. You're gonna have the pond consultant who is going to just do the monitoring, which is completely quantitative, go out, do some samples, do some testing. Assessing that through some kind of scoring matrix that will determine whether it's been successful or not. And then you have the contractor, herbicide treatment, hydro raking, whatever, right? So those three packages, but I think there's a lot of benefit in coupling the monitoring with this pond management consultant.
Oh, I agree that I think we should consider it, but I think we could also look at consultant, then manager who might also treat, and then potentially going back to the first consultant to help with the analysis at the end. So there's all sorts of ways to do it.
To be determined.
Oh, well, exactly. That's what we need to discuss and figure out, move forward with.
Part of the agenda, so
Exactly.
we'll get there.
Exactly.
I'm Rose, and I just wanted to say thank you to Ryan and Amanda for joining and answering our questions and providing extra information. It's been really helpful, and I'll definitely stay in touch with you all as the staff representative for this group. So
Very sorry to add one last question.
No problem.
What is the time frame for procurement? Like how long should we, if we wanted to get somebody going, should we plan on that being 2 months out to get through this process, or is it?
I'll let Amanda speak to that one because she we've had a few somewhat similar types of projects. So Amanda, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. The minimum posting requirements for these things are 2 weeks. And then, but you also have to take into account the timeline of getting it to the paper ahead of time. There are some things. So I would say two months does sound about right. Depending on, my workload or what other projects I have going on and the priorities of some things. Sometimes I can also turn things around quicker. So a minimum of a month, but likely 2 months from the time you get me materials to the time we are able to get it out there, have it posted, and awarded.
Was the 2 weeks the time that the bid's just sitting out there?
Yep, so it has to be publicly posted in a newspaper, as well as on the state Combis website for 2 weeks. So it generally, we have to have it to the paper about a week and a half before then. So 2 months is about the time frame from the time we can have it finalized and send it out there. Sometimes three months to the time we're all done with contract negotiations and everything is signed and whatnot.
Yeah.
And
And if I could just add, and Amanda, maybe you could speak to this too. There's also a front end process. That's what Amanda's quoting is once we have the request for proposals ready to go out and be published. Because the things you're talking about here at the meeting and that you're going to be looking, later in your agenda with the adaptive management plan, it's going to take some time to come up with what you want and
Your
also
scope of
put
work,
it
yep.
in a way that is, that sort of complies with Mass General Law. I'll give you, one example that Amanda and I see a lot of times, say on these programs we're trying to quantify. Say someone says like, okay, well, we're going to look at past recommendations from other customers. Like, did they give them a good rating or a bad rating? But it's something that they'll put in, but they really won't allow you to quantify, and you have to be really careful about with an RFP being able to quantify how you're judging everybody in the same way. So that's why you'll see a lot of things say like experience. If someone has 0 to 5 years experience, you give them the lowest level. If it's 5 to 10, next highest. And so, so that we're basically the way that the process works is you're treating everybody the same. But that will take some time to put together on the front end. So what Amanda's talking about is on the back end. So, that's going to take you at least probably, a month, maybe two as well, working with Rose and us as to just get that together. And as well as coming back, when you have that together, you're going to be going back to your board and having them look at it and thinking, does this cover everything that we want it to be? It's not just one person making that decision.
But to wrap that up, we would prepare, as a committee, we would prepare the scope and the qualifications, send that to you. You would probably massage that in some form to get it into an acceptable RFP. Then it's 1 to 2 months from that date. And then our decision process on the other end would be whatever it would be.
Yeah, I think that's safe to say. Yeah. Mhm.
And what, Ryan, Phil Brewer, once it goes out to a public website, whatever that is, are companies regularly looking at that stuff so they know that there's a possible job out there for them? How does that, not knowing anything about the procurement process?
Amanda, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yep. So we post it on the state has a website for all procurements called Combis. So a lot of vendors are keyed into that and they actually get alerts when things are posted. Most of these vendors are looking for these types of work. They know to look in papers for the legal ads and things that we have to post. But we can, if there are companies that we're comfortable with that we've used before that does this kind of work, you can direct them to the town's website, which is where the official documentation will be for them to come and download. Once everything is finalized, no one will send it out directly to anyone because we use our website to track who downloads and receives the package. So we can, if there's any addendum that need to be issued, we're able to track it that way. But if there are companies that we want to solicit quotes from, we could say, we have this project out for bid. Please take a look at the town website to download the package materials.
Under the public bid process, if we reach out to a company to get information, how much might something cost? Does that preclude them from bidding the job later?
No.
No.
In fact, actually, it's encouraged because you want to get a sense of what that would be. So that type of information solicitation is good. It also serves as a basis because if I don't know, having worked with other water body entities and other communities, a lot of these groups talk to one another, and so they may be able to give you some ideas about good vendors who might be able to serve an advisory role, other vendors who might be able to serve more on the operational side of things. So, so talking to them, getting a sense of cost, that kind of thing, that's fine. It's in fact encouraged.
Yeah, so because there's a company, Sunco, that I work with a lot. So if we called them and asked some questions like the task force did,
Right.
and then we put the bid out, they won't be prohibited in any way from bidding.
No.
Even though they might get some inside information just by the questions and stuff.
Well, I mean, and the questions you're probably going to be asking is like, hey, this is the scope of work I'm looking to do. What sort of ballpark figure? I mean, like so as long as, you're not promising anything, you're just basically saying that they're available to participate in the bid process. I think that, generally is
Yeah, you
fine.
wouldn't want to be sharing any forms with them, as we're working on them outside. It would just be conversations about scope, what would be included, like Ryan said, what might this cost? Once we have the forms ready, the only time that someone would be precluded is if we sent them something ahead of time before, they had some sort of extra time or insight into the formality of it would be a problem.
Right. Right. And two, if you know firms that do this type of work, once the bid's up, then encourage those parties to be aware of the fact that it's there and for them to submit a bid.
All right, very good. Any other questions?
Thank you both.
Okay.
Very helpful.
We
Thank you
really
so much.
appreciate you guys taking the time to come in and giving us advice and information prior to us going through the process. So thank
Yeah.
you.
And, both Amanda, myself, and Rose, we're all here as resources to you to help you, meet your objectives.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank
Okay.
you
All
all.
right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
That would be helpful to get an idea on a run of what a consultant costs.
It could, keep
Absolutely.
in mind that also that information is often not free. I know with the Warner's Pond Task Force,
Yeah, we have to pay for that.
Really?
it did
Just to get
cost,
an idea.
yes.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
More than 5 figures?
Depends on what you're asking, but, these are professionals who have experience, and then when you ask them for information like that, they can put together a detailed analysis of
Yeah.
what they think the range would be.
yeah,
And that's
turn
take
into that.
time.
Also, they like to do it because they think that might give them an edge in their work. I mean, I've done that all the time with contractors.
okay. All right, well, something more to talk about, right? Okay, the next item on the agenda is the operating protocol. So I included that because when I was on the Warner's Pond Task Force, we also had a protocol that it was just really just a formal way, in a sense, to confirm what our parts are, that we are all agreed to work together as a committee. We've agreed to do it respectfully. We're committed to the charge. And so what I just wanted to do is really just put it in a more formal layout, and then basically to and then to vote on it. Do we agree with this? Do we are ready to move forward with this? So I sent that out beforehand clearly because I wanted people to take a look at it, see if you had any questions, comments, issues. So I'll open that up. Dave?
I thought it was great. And I only had one question. I did submit this question to Delia formally,
Okay.
but I'm kind of hit a dead end, so I'm gonna ask you to do it. I would like clarification as to if involvement by anybody on this committee in, say, Warner's Pond or any other sort of similar type of organization that might have a stakeholder interest in that, is that considered a conflict of interest?
Yeah, and
I'd like to actually a formal
there was a
answer on that.
similar thing, which is like people live next to the pond, right? So I was a little confused about that one point about conflicts of interest, because I think they're inherent the way the committee has been set up. And I think they're okay within Massachusetts law. I just was confused by that point in the protocol.
Uh-huh. I think so my inference in that more was, is there a conflict of interest in participating on this committee? Being involved and doing what the charge is? Does anybody have a conflict with any other outside influence on?
Such as, I mean, commercial things like a consultant that might do work for us, or that one's an obvious one.
Yes, of course, but just that it's really more, is everyone committed to this charge? And I guess, one of the things that did come up and that's been talked about is that if you were committed to dam removal at one point in time, but you're now willing to work on this committee and you want to be a part of this committee and you want to move things forward. Is that a conflict or are you like, no, this is okay, we're gonna move forward, we believe in this and we're gonna do whatever we can to make this happen?
I think my question is a little more specific, because my personal perspective on that specific, I wouldn't care if somebody said they're on the committee. They're on the committee and
Yeah.
that's what they want to do. I'm asking more like, let's say I want to continue to participate in Save Warner's Pond.
Right,
And they have a website,
Right.
and I want to put content on that website. Some of that content overlaps with no inside information about our, decision-making per se, although this is a public meeting. Maybe I'm going to say, hey, this is what I think what's going on in the pond, and this is what I think, maybe adaptive management could include. Is that considered a conflict of interest? Or similarly, if you were in ORS and saying, you know what, I'm on this committee, but I know that ORS is publishing that saying Warner's Pond and the conditions and the dissolved oxygen in Warner's Pond are impacting downstream, and we're publishing them. Is that a conflict? So both those sort of two
Right.
buckets.
I can't find the operating protocol. I'm looking through all of the emails that were sent and I'm sorry,
Yeah, it's in,
It was sent-
I can't find it. So I wouldn't feel comfortable voting on something that I haven't been able to read, but
I'd sent it with the agenda and the protocol and the minutes,
Was it the first agenda, Chris?
first agenda.
Just-
Yeah.
I'm just not seeing
I
it.
wouldn't mind if you sent it again, but in it, to speak to Dan's question, I think what you're asking is going to be determined by the Massachusetts Ethics Commission, and they're the people that you should pose that question to.
So here's the path I took, and I was fresh off the training. This first committee I've ever been on, I took all the training, and it said you have to go to the appointing agency. So I went to Delia because she was listed as a director of the Natural Resource Commission. I can pretty much tell you if I went to the state of Massachusetts, they're not gonna have a clue about Save Warner's Pond or anything. They deal with standard ethics issues. So to me, it's more about what does the Natural Resource Commission think is a conflict for the members of this subcommittee? Would they perceive that as a conflict or not? Because if they don't perceive it as a conflict, I don't think it's a conflict. And I would proceed forward with joining ORS, doing whatever else I wanted to do.
As I understand the process, and other people might understand it better than me, if you feel that there's a potential for a conflict, like, especially if there's a direct financial interest, such as perhaps being in a butter, but if it's more complex question, still, you make a disclosure to the appointing body, and the appointing body can then make a determination that says, we realize that you have something, but we think you can deal with this, without a bias. But if you think it's something more complicated than that, I do think the Ethics Commission they don't deal with on Warner's Pond, but they deal with these questions of conflict of interest all the time.
Yeah,
I-
I guess, all right, let me follow that. So who is the appointing agency? Who is the contact? How should that correspondence take place? Or could you, as chair of this, put that request for clarification in?
The
There
agency
is
is the Natural Resource Commission.
Right, and so it wasn't Delia, so is it, who
She's
is?
the head of, she's the head of.
Well.
I know, you told me to call her state.
Sarah
She's
Drummond would be the
not
chair.
of the Natural Resource. I'd start with that.
Well, she's director of the.
Division of Natural
But
Resources.
she's also listed as the director of the NRC.
She's not the.
The
On the
Division of
website
Natural
anyways.
Resources. The NRC is a commission,
Right.
but it's up to the individual to disclose a conflict of interest. So you can't say, I think that person has a conflict of interest and they should report it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like I'm trying to disclose conflict of interest, like, oh, I'm still have a relationship with GZA and GZA is gonna bid this job.
Right.
I'm trying to say, can I continue to be a member of Save Warner's Pond? Can I do that actively? Can I, what is that, would that be perceived by them as a conflict of interest? I don't know. They particularly selected you because you were a member.
I think where you have to be careful is if your participation in something outside is publicly visible and in some way attempting to manipulate this committee, then I think that's a conflict, right? If it's just participating that's one thing, but it's a very complicated thing, right? Because it's a question of your motivation and whether or not you're doing it undermines the work of this committee. I think that's what it comes down to, and only you can be the judge of that. You know where you're coming from when you're doing it.
But there's already an infrastructure. We all took the training. There's already an infrastructure in place to take care of people who have some sort of professional conflict of interest. I'm not sure why we would need to cite an additional affirmation that we're committed to the committee. This is a hardworking committee. We've all volunteered. We've been vetted by both the Natural Resources Commission and the Select Board. I'm not sure why we need to sign an additional affirmation that we're committed to the charge of the committee. I didn't see the operational protocol. I've never been asked to sign something like this, but my smell test right now tells me it seems gratuitous. I'm not sure what exactly the purpose of this is when there's a whole infrastructure already in place to capture those who might have a conflict of interest.
I think I agree with you to the extent that we all understand what the charge is, which is why we're charged from the task force, which is why we're here and we've agreed to that. But Bill, Dan, using your example, Friends of Warner's Pond, they're pretty much in line with the task force recommendation. However, oars, which isn't necessarily so, I would see that as a possible conflict. If someone here wanted to become a member of oars who doesn't necessarily want to preserve the pond, which the task force recommendation suggests, I think I might have a problem on that basis with oars.
Yeah, I mean, I was hesitant to ask the question because it would sound like I was asking it about oars. Oars took a position on dam removal, but oars as an organization is interested in the ecological health of the Three River system, which, is a bigger goal, right? So I never looked at participation in oars, even whatever opinion you might have had, as being an issue or a conflict.
Right. It's not
concerned
mutually
people
exclusive or presumptive.
I'm more concerned that people are going to say like, oh my God, you're publishing stuff on a website and you're trying to, because maybe you're not happy with the direction the committee's going or whatever.
Here's me say something. One of the things we found in the task force though has to do with courtesies. And in a certain sense, this is as much a courtesy. I don't think anyone here should be representing themselves at, say, for example, an oars meeting, as representing this committee with an opinion. They should make sure that they are focused on this. In other words, join oars if you want, be part of oars, join whatever organizations, but keep this work within ourselves. I mean, it's public, but don't make an opinion like this at an oars meeting or an oars event that that somehow contradicts what we're doing right here. That's a fairly clear thing to do.
Right.
I think that's implicit, and I think it's a little micromanaging of thought to try to get people to affirm some sort of. I honestly, I'll look forward to reading it, but this seems like the wrong foot to get off of. I'm not sure what it's presuming, but it doesn't make any sense to me.
So I'm sorry that you feel that way, but I guess let me explain my reasoning for doing it. And as I said before, the Warner's Pond Task Force had done this. That was my first type of committee that I was involved in. So it seems to me that if they were asking me to do that, then any committee that I was on should be doing some sort of operating protocol. Now, if it's like you said, this is all basically something that we should be following anyways. And it's really just laid out, say, yeah, yes, we all agree, or no, I have an issue with this or that. And I'm not asking you to sign it. I'm asking you to vote on it. Do you agree that this is the types of protocols that we should have with each other? Should we have these open discussions? Should we be able to be respectful and agree to disagree on different things? Whether you're back to Dan's question of oars, like for instance, say he wants to be a member of oars. Well, of course he can be a member of oars. That's not a problem. But working on this committee, is he willing to put this committee, follow the charge and do what is requested from the committee? I personally did not think that it was overstepping any bounds or asking you to do anything that you basically haven't already said you were gonna do.
So it's a reaffirmation of the task force.
I think that this sort of thing was absolutely necessary in the task force because it was purposely bringing together people with very conflicting goals and interests. Whereas we've been chosen because we're all aligned on what we're here for, which is to preserve Waters Pond and make it accessible. So I think that's a significant difference as to whether or not something like this is needed. I think it was absolutely necessary in that other committee for task.
And I think we need to be free to express our opinions, however those may evolve over 3 to 5 years. So again, I'll look forward to reading it, but I'm not sure of the reason for it, but let's table it till next month when it looks like I'm not the only one who didn't read it because I heard someone else saying, please send it out again. So if we could push it to the next month, that would be great.
I will say also, just of all the other committees that I've been on in the town, which were numerous, this is not a standard protocol.
Okay, well, thank you for that. I mean, like I said, the one that I
Yeah.
was on, it was something that we did do, so. I just felt that it was something we should also do as well, and I didn't think that it was really that. A big ask or a big inconvenience, but we can certainly table it. I'll send it out again. Please take a look at it, and if there's something, for instance, the conflict of interest, if you feel that we've covered that, that's fine. But take a look at it and we'll discuss it again next time.
Yeah,
Because-
maybe it can just be considered a reminder of the protocols.
Right,
Now leave it at that.
okay. All right. So we'll table that to next. All right, then next on the agenda is so Bill and I, Carleen, you had asked or requested that Bill and I put together a brief presentation so that you could understand where we were coming from and why we were saying some of the things we were saying in the last meeting. And so we've done that, and Bill is gonna head that.
All right, let's see, Rose, can you let me share this with you, with folks?
So I just made you co-host, so see if you can select share,
I can.
and then you should be able to. Perfect.
All right, good. So here it is up here on the screen. What we think we've learned, many of the stuff you may already know, but this was what seemed most significant for us as we worked through this during those a year and a half. Things I'm sure you're aware of. Number one, that it's a 47 square mile watershed. That's huge. And therefore it's going to be very difficult to control point source nutrient loading, especially nitrogen and phosphorus. We're not going to be able to get our hands around this pond the way other people have in other places. And that's something which was very clear to us. And the pond will always be getting these nutrients, and it will also always be on the receiving end of invasive plants from the watershed. So we're not going to ever really wipe these things out. So that's one thing. The second thing is the two tributaries that flow into the pond, the brook, Neshoba and Fort Pond, they merge just above the pond, and they form a broad delta of emergent wetlands. And that seemed to us to be significant. Because as we'll talk about this later, we're going to talk about sediments. A lot of the sediments may very well be dropped at that very place. And you can see that in a few minutes. You'll see where a lot of that takes place. The other thing, which is, I think, remarkable, and I even need to understand this further, it enters and leaves at a very quick rate. The flushing rate, this is things which is from both reports, the 2012 and the 20, whatever it was, is nearly 379 times per year. That's less than a full day. And according to them, and I'm sure again you know better than I, the flushing rate indicates that water moves through the pond very quickly, and it's remarkable. And in fact, the report says we should look at the pond more like a large wide pool within a river system rather than a pond. It's moving through that quickly. Now, I need to understand a lot about this, about herbicides, about how quickly they might flow through, but also whether this is really true. In other words, there are some pockets in that pond which I have a hard time believing that water's moving out of there every 24 hours. Is it just the flow of the rivers of the two brooks that come in that's coming out within every 24 hours? but it seemed to be appropriate for us to think about this and how it was set up. Next, we talked about the distinct communities, and I remember this is what we discovered, and you probably know this already. There are 4 distinct ecological communities in the pond. There's the shallow marsh on the western side of the pond. There's the scrub, emergent marsh, marsh willow, etc. There's open water habitat. Now this clearly, this map, which was used even in the 2023 consultants report, is a bit outdated because we know that a lot of that open water that's put here is now much higher, has much more water or covering by vegetation, and this is suggested. Much more, but still, it gives you the idea that there being four communities, and then the upland land on Scout Island, etc. Okay, this is an interesting thought that Warner's Pond, because it does have a diversity of types of habitats, means this is right from the reports. The mix of water depths, etc., means that there's a whole diversity of wildlife here, and we should be aware of that. We're not going to try to get rid of, the marsh. That's very important. What we're trying to save, and in fact, this is the second point, is going to be the open water habitat, which is slowly being overrun by emergent plants. Over the long run, this is the other thing, the pond will continue to fill with sediment, of course, and will gradually transition into a shrub emergent wetland through the process of succession. And this will obviously get rid of the value as an open water habitat. And then there are other significant things that we have to watch carefully: the further development of Giroux Park, the use of the MCI property, and the removal of the Talbot Dam along the Concord River, and the impact that that'll have on fish migration. And we want to be aware of all that as we go forward. This is something that led us to think more again about this having the management plan. So things you know already. The Warner's Pond Committee, we should be focused on 4 things. I think we thought the significant reduction of the invasive vegetation, and if possible, the sediment accumulation. We should enhance the environment for wildlife, enhance the recreational potential for the community, and gather wide community involvement. All right, having said that, so what are the problems? What are the other things? We're almost done, actually. All right, significantly reduce the invasive vegetation, and if possible, the sediment accumulation. Now, here's the problem with the sediment. The thickest sediment is near the deep hole, and there's a drain over there by Route 2. And I don't know, we've never looked into this far enough, but I do wonder whether it was in the building of Route 2 or the constant water draining off of Route 2 with sand, etc., which is pouring all that sediment into that one corner of the property.
Sorry, Bill, where is that on the map?
See that darkest part of brown, Phil, way up in the upper, let me put it up here. This area right up here.
Can I add a thought about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the first thing is we have several different sources of sediment data that we had going back to 1999. And the first sources were just probing. And then the second source were taking shallow Shelby tube.
Right.
And then most recently, they did a bunch of fibercores, which for those of you who may not know, you go down to a pretty good column of sediment, and they create these sediment thickness maps. So part of the interpretation of that sediment is you have to first kind of look at it in the context of the geologic history, and then the physical history of the pond, because you want to separate what they're calling sediment from what we're really interested in, is what's happened once it's been an active pond, and what does that mean about what's happening today.
Agreed.
So
why don't we go into more depth and over?
Yeah.
I'm almost done, Dan, so we can talk this
but
further.
it will tell you
Exactly.
why
I
it's
understand.
thick there.
For
Versus
example,
it's not a point source now.
well, there is, Dan, you may be aware of that. There is a major pipe coming in from on Route 2, which I do wonder about whether that's pouring more sediment in. Same thing, yeah.
Yes, but there's not a delta in front of that storm.
No, I know, but there is sandy coming in. I'm not sure, it may have come even from the building of Route 2 back in the 1930s. I'm not arguing that point, just pointing out where it is.
That was actually built when they built Route 2. That pipe was.
It was, okay. So who knows? All I know is that's one big spot. The other thing, of course, is there's more buildup around Stout Island on the western side, which is probably due, and this is probably the thing you're talking about, Dan. The excessive milfoil, other vegetation, which layer upon years of different types of sedimentation. The other area, and I'm not quite sure where, but I wonder whether that delta may have an influence on the placement of the sediment. And I don't see it right here as much, but I wouldn't be surprised if it does. The final thing, which I want to mention, is it surprises me that there's very little sediment towards the dam. And in most, dam
Water
situations,
flows through so fast.
yeah, but in most dams, it's usually the water hits the dam and it drops this sediment and it builds up in a big, but we don't have that here. So just in passing. All right.
I wonder too, also, that when they reconstructed.
Oh,
the
yeah.
dam,
They washed it
well,
out.
that a lot of it could have washed away.
Could very well have been. So Dan, you probably can fill us in all the details on this. Here's the thing about the invasive and nuisance, I should have said vegetation, or we should have said. We discovered that these are the methods that we were told that can do something about it. There may be others that we don't know about, but what we heard is there's the annual hand pulling of water chestnuts and water lilies, maybe using a machine, but we know that just chops up a lot of other things, so we're not sure that's a helpful thing. Herbicidal treatments, diver assisted suctioning, drawdown, and biological controls. We know there's one for loosestrife. There's one being developed for milfoil, but it's not particularly successful. So those are the only ones that we as a committee at the time could find that we thought we ought to explore as a committee.
What about the agitators? The surface mounted thing that agitates the
Yeah,
water.
so that is,
So well, there was an alternatives analysis that was done that goes through each of these and,
These are still the only ones that we know of. Do you know of anything else that I haven't on this list?
I think, there were many more that were listed that were thrown out.
Like
I
what?
think
Maybe one? I'd like to know. I thought.
the alternative
Dredging.
analysis.
Dredging.
Oh, dredging. Of course, dredging. Yeah. Why didn't put that down? As I thought that was off the table. So unless
yeah,
we're.
I mean, there's also methods to stabilize the
I think
nutrients.
you have to
and
keep it on
sediment.
the table. It's
Yeah.
the one
You
thing
still-
that would work
Yeah, that's true.
without any,
And there's another thing we didn't put down either. This was you're right, we can add that to it. The other thing I would put down is a benthic barrier. But that was also at the committee level.
Yeah, that is something that we didn't really talk too much about, but it certainly could be
There's a-
something that you could use like at the boat launch to, clean that area up a little bit. But there's all these different ideas that came up in the 2012 report that had been looked at. This is a listing of some of them. We know that we have used the biological controls on the loosestrife quite a while back.
Well, yeah.
I'm not even sure if it's like 15 years or something like that. And in looking at the loosestrife again, that might be something that we want to consider again. Because I think it's just kind of outlasted its usefulness.
Is this in random order, Bill, or is
It's in no particular.
Yeah, no particular order. These are just things
Yeah.
I've pulled out of the various reports we've had that we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, my perspective that we're not sitting here relying on what the previous task force is.
Correct.
Our goal is to.
No, if you find something different,
Reconsider these.
this is just where we came from.
And-
Really not mutually
Right.
exclusive, and we were asked to put together, what had we come up with, what had we
Right.
talked about? And
Yeah.
this is kind of like not a sort of a starting point.
Yeah, so starting point, this is what we've been thinking when we suggested forming a committee, we figured this is where you're gonna end up going.
Right.
I'm curious for the task force, so where did you end up with Dash?
Yeah,
Oh, there's a lot of interesting things
What
about
about
it.
it?
There's a lot of good and bad about it. For small areas, it seemed to work, and it doesn't do it for a long period of time. But we didn't pursue it very deeply, but one possibility, at least we talked about it in one of the smaller work groups, was in the area between Scout Pond and the boat launch. An area about an acre or so going across. You'd have to do it every once in a while if you started doing it. But anyway, not saying we should do that, just looking at the possibilities.
so is that actually divers going in and pulling?
They actually suction it out.
suction it up and put it into a pontoon boat, of which there's only a couple in the state, and getting rid of those, but, actually, I thought Dan's suggestion from the earlier meeting of going through the generic draft GER was really helpful, because it went through all the analyses, again, all the potential things that can be done, any pond, and, I don't know if you guys have had a chance to
Yeah,
look through
yeah,
that. It was really helpful, and once again, looking,
I think I sent you an email. I lost it. You sent it out and it was on the state website, but when I went back to that link, what happened was there was a different draft
Well,
there.
I think
something
what's
else.
confusing is it's 2025 draft first, but they call it the lake management plan. But they actually titled the document something different.
Tell you what, let me finish this and you guys can figure out
Um,
all that.
It's called like aquatic something.
beautification and aquatic
Yeah,
Yeah,
management.
but that is their
We'll-
lake
We'll
management.
go through, let him finish,
You
and
finish.
then we'll,
Our point, the point we were making is that we thought the main target had to be the invasive and the nuisance vegetation. So our thought was this: if you significantly reduce the invasive and the nutrient vegetations, you are going to provide more opportunities for wildlife. You will increase the recreational opportunities, and you will require the engagement from the community. Volunteers to help pull plants, to conduct surveys, everything from wildlife to maybe sediment core, whatever. So you will have to do that. At the time, we were thinking this would have been the process, but I can see where it's changing already after hearing that from the
Right.
finance department. That the NRC would approve of the prepare a mission statement, appoint membership. It's been done. We clarify the funds available. We have done that. That could be used for an adaptive management plan. And now I think we're down here about when funds we know what they are. We consider doing an RFP for a pond consultant, and maybe before that, I think this is where Dan's going to head.
right.
We should think more about what we want from a pond consultant, et cetera. But anyway, that's where we ended up.
Nice job, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was the purpose of that.
Thank you for your service.
Seeing that, my reaction is all of these possible interventions, it would be good to, at some point, to write them down and indicate what is good and what is problematic about each one.
In my opinion, so far, this is just me, every one of them is problematic.
Right.
Yeah.
And they all
But that's the problem, right? It's the lesser of two evils.
Exactly, absolutely.
And
And this is where this is where probably the answer, you may have to experiment, and figure out.
That's what adaptive
Yeah.
management.
Just as an example,
So-
Bear Hill Pond has just gone through the drawdown,
Yeah, yeah,
and they're refilling it right now.
yes,
So
yeah,
we can look to that as, information.
yeah,
And I would say, just, as you said, going back to this DEIR, which goes through each of these things and lists very clearly
Yes.
advantages and disadvantages, sort of statewide.
If we could do that for ourselves and as a group agree on what those advantages and disadvantages are and what those different techniques are, and be a good basis for
And-
the
and-
discussions.
I would add to that, that there is a very well-defined process for this committee to use to do that.
Yes.
So Paul, can you
Just
want
just
to?
very quickly. Keep in mind, none of these have been consistently applied.
Right.
Right,
right,
So what they have in common is that none have been consistently applied.
right.
If anyone, the question for you, if any one or two of them were consistently applied, they'd be a different result. So that's what the adaptive management plan, I think, is all about.
Yeah.
The, consistent application of X, Y, and Z, or just X.
And that's what we heard in that Bear Hill report, it's the consistency of when you try something, stay with it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it has an increasing effect on a greater number of times you do it.
Mhm.
So the other question I had regarding Talbot Dam, the last information I saw was that was reopened to be contested again the very end of last year, and there was a 60-day period, which I think would have ended in late February, to see what they were going to do.
Hmm.
It was very far from a foregone conclusion that it's going to be removed.
Right, I think you're right, Bill, I haven't heard anything since, I know that,
Would be glad to comment on that.
Yeah.
So it has been approved by most of the committees that have to approve it, and most permits have been obtained. What's the holdup at the moment is with the Historic Districts Commission, which denied the application to remove the dam. So that was appealed to what's called NIMCOG, which is the regional association. NIMCOG went and said, well, we don't, they remanded it back to the Historic Districts Commission and said, well, you gotta tell us why. And there has been a response from the Historic Districts Commission to NIMCOG, which I haven't seen a copy of it yet. It is unclear if that is sufficient in NIMCOG's opinion. Regardless, the most likely outcome is that this will be litigated. And that the applicant will litigate the denial from the Historic Districts Commission. I forget whether it's historic districts or historical. And one of the sensitive points on that is that what I've heard is that the town of Billerica will not be supplying town council to defend themselves, yes. And a lot of that is because, the applicant had considered a lot of mitigation measures that they said they would be glad to, leave a little bit of the structures that are there and, pay for signage and stuff. And that mitigation would generally, under other circumstances, be considered appropriate. So that's the only holdup.
Appropriate historic. It's in the historic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess it's not a foregone conclusion, but it's a big question.
It's a small
Yeah,
question
it's a
mark.
small question.
It's a small question mark. It is, I would say, highly likely that ban will be removed. It just delays it some.
So Carleen had her hand up.
Thank you. It's almost as an aside, but I just wanted to share with you a strange coincidence that the reason I'm in Asheville is to look at the wake of Hurricane Helene and 18 months after the disaster there. And we're reporting it, but I spent the whole morning with the chief scientist of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, who's also the director of the U.S. National Climate Assessment. And all we did all morning was talk about these sorts of bodies of water and all of the brooks and riverways that go into them, and their health and their sustainability and their function in things like floods. And, as you know or don't know, a 26 to 32 foot wall came and wiped out a lot of the areas around Asheville. And a lot of that came from these sort of brooks and creeks that were overwhelmed. And so it's clearly outside of our charge, but I think as we think about the health and the future of the pond, maybe as part of our recommendations, we can think a little bit about mitigation and management of the dangers of the pond and protecting those who live on it, because those are the people who were washed away in what happened around here. And it was a very similar situation. There's a 50-mile watershed into this body of water, and so because of that, and because of all this water that you so specifically talked about, Bill, it would be interesting and smart, I think, for us as part of our recommendations to sort of have a futuristic look and make recommendations to the town on a broader health for the residents who live around it, but also, maintaining the pond's form and shape as a unit.
The other thing I'd say too, if I may just get one more piece, we did investigate looking into fish passages. And we found that remarkably, we were well suited there's 3 different types. 2 of them, they're in terms of their ability to help fish. We're well suited for the best of the 3. We could put it so with a stream and sort of like, you probably know that.
It's not coincidence. So I believe, which I did not work on the job, but I believe the secondary channel was constructed in anticipation.
I can believe it.
It didn't go through because they didn't perceive the need.
Yeah. But it's one of the best of the 3, and it could be done. And we even I don't remember what the price was, but it was remarkably low given the other expenses that we looked at.
I think the nuance, the detail, it's the study EA did concluded that they needed to take the secondary, the weir down, and I'm not sure that
Where's the weir?
would be required. It's a spillway structure to get that ladder grade.
Yeah.
But aside from that,
But it looked pretty good.
It could be.
It's a doable,
Right.
it's
We
doable.
come to that point.
Carleen, I totally agree with everything you said. In part because that's what I do for a living. But my hesitation is that if we do go down that process, that we do it with a very specific understanding of the data and the details, and not do it at a sort of high level emotional.
No, I just mean as recommendations for further study, because
Right.
there's definitely implications of of keeping this, of not thinking ahead to what could happen with these bodies of water. It's just interesting. I just thought I would share it because it's, you know, it's related, at least adjacently to what we're talking about.
And certainly aside from the flood hazard part of the climatological issue, we have the issue of just temperature. I mean, we are a warm waters fishery, and based on the latest summer temperature readings we still have about 8 degrees Celsius to go before we hit the Massachusetts border. So, you know, that's probably a good 50 years away, but it is definitely a consideration.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I'd like to, I was hopeful that this presentation would lead us into this next part, which is the adaptive management plan part. And honestly, everyone, I would like to finish up at 5 based on the weather, et cetera. We don't see anything yet, but I'm mindful of that. And there's a couple of things that we do need to talk about, and one of them, very importantly, is the meeting schedule. So I would like to talk about the adaptive management plan in a sense of, you know, where do we start? What do we need to do? And in speaking with Dan, he sent us the adaptive management protocols there, or the adaptive management process that we all had an opportunity to look at. I sent it out, I believe it was Monday.
Mhm.
And so based on that, whatever Dan had put together, which I sent out as well to everyone, what about how to take a look at the adaptive management process. How does it work? What do we need to do? And I think it's important for us to look at that. Do we agree with it? Is that the process that we want to go in? And if so, great, because then we really need to start creating that plan. And understand what the issues are, what we want to do to move forward.
I'm just, are you thinking we create the plan, or the consultant, we work with this consultant who develops the plan?
I think that we have to have a basis of what we want, but I that's open for discussion.
Well, roughly reading through, I did not read the whole thing, but it seems like there's a baseline of information we have to agree on, right? Because if you're gonna do an adaptive management plan, you have to define what you're gonna measure going in, right? So we need agreements on a lot of baseline things about what it is we're trying to do.
And that's inherent, that step is inherent.
Right, that's one of
in
the first
process.
steps. And I think that's a complex step, because it's not just what's technically possible, it's also what's politically possible, right? It's what can be funded. Can you rely on, you know, CPA forever to provide funding, or do we need it from the town? You know, what are the different implications financially of various approaches? So anyway, I think it's a lot of work to do that first step, which is identifying what it is you're trying to achieve and how it might work. Because I read in the plan, it said you have to be sensitive to the greater environment.
Right. I mean, would it help to just quickly go through those slides?
I think
for a
we
few
should.
minutes?
Yeah.
I think we should, yes.
I'll make you
I
a
think I
co-host
have that here.
unless you want me to.
No, it's okay.
Okay.
I think I can share it. I just have it open.
Okay, you should be able to share now. Let me know if you
Right.
can.
Since you've read the slides and let me do this in slideshow format. I'm gonna, in the interest of time, try and blow through this very quickly. It's, I think, sorry about that.
It did get a little mind numbing.
Well, the slides were so great, but I was a little confused because it said there's this 2009 and 2007 updates, but the links to that didn't work. Did anyone else find that?
I just have to figure out how to get this.
I don't know if there was any substantial
Okay.
change.
Didn't get that.
All right, so, well, you read these, so I'll just,
Yeah.
the first one is pretty obvious, but the point is that the decision to do an adaptive management approach has already been made. And then the point here is that once you've made that decision, as opposed to dredging, which is a very different type of approach, that is a pretty well-defined process in the industry. It's not an abstract sort of subjective.
Question, did you say that dredging is not something you would do in an adaptive management?
Well, they differ in the sense that the dredging, the way it was proposed to the town, was sort of a one-time activity. And it would deal with many of the issues we're going to look at to adaptive management by performing that one activity. Adaptive management, it's sort of like you got to deal with your lawn. I gave you this analogy. You could just rip your lawn up and put down gravel, right? You've dealt with your lawn. That's the quote dredging. Or you could just mow your lawn. That's the adaptive management. I'm trying to keep it simplistically because you could blend very targeted dredging and as a process into adaptive management.
Can I say one more
Yeah.
thing too? The other part of this is that the charge that we were given, and it was very, very strongly said to us that look at, as when you go to this management committee, dredging right now is off the table. Okay, we can certainly talk about that, and it's not a dirty word, but
I never saw that in
I
writing.
didn't
Who
either.
told you that?
this was coming from the task force, and basically the reason given was the amount of money. And if you look at the task force recommendation, one of the issues was that if we are looking to spend larger quantities of money, then we need to really closely look at this, and dredging is clearly a bit more money than $200,000. So some of these things, we agreed to the adaptive management plan, which was not dam removal, which was not dredging. It's kind of like the third option of what other things are available, of which we know there are many available things to try. Those are the things to be looking at to see if we can utilize.
I hear your point, Chris, but I don't think we should take dredging off the table because, what with the redevelopment of MCI and the Rotary and everything, what if we can find matching money from somebody? So adaptive management in my mind could and should include the possibility of
Yeah,
dredging.
I guess the point that I'm trying to get here is you can categorize approaches, right? A large scale dredging approach is not adaptive management. They made adaptive management is something the way Chris described it. So if the committee is charged with revisiting all the broad approaches, that's one thing. But if we're strictly instructed to do adaptive management, then that's my point here. I don't have an opinion one way or the other about that. I'm just saying, if you're going to do adaptive management, that's your charge.
I think you mean like
I'm sorry, the way I read that government document on adaptive management is a concept independent of what method you're gonna choose to achieve an end, right? The way you're using it is adaptive management. Maybe we should call it something else, but adaptive management is constrained to not dredging.
I think he was saying like dredging as a blanket approach where it's like you're dredging the whole pond versus like potentially pockets.
Yeah, it's maintenance
Targeted,
dredging
right.
versus a dredging
So
as
maybe
a
that's
single
the
mitigation
thing.
activity.
And I don't think anyone's saying anything's off.
I just like to be comfortable that some aspect of dredging, to know before we abandon dredging that we've at least looked at it and whether or not some aspect of it might be part of an adaptive management plan.
Right.
Can I try something, Nick? And this is an interesting question, and I'm not against what you're suggesting.
Right.
The problem for us was getting this through the task force.
Right.
And the only way we could get this through, we could get ourselves to vote with near unanimity was by eliminating dredging. At least putting it, I think actually, yeah, for the time being, we put it as one of the last resorts. We didn't say it was completely gone. In that sense, we didn't say even dam removal was completely gone. But we said, give us a chance to try to find some other methods before we turn to that. Now, I do think, I'm picking up, your point and Phil's point, it might be something we want to look at in the future.
I don't see anything in writing or any other way that said we couldn't look at it as a possibility and to understand its implications.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say, just another part of this thing. I'm sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
No, I believe a few minutes. On dredging, you guys need adaptive management means to really try, quote unquote experiment with certain methods to see if they work. You're not gonna experiment with dredging,
Right.
unless, you know,
Yeah, good
unless
point.
you find a grant that you can do some dredging and part of experiment, so. Yeah, it may turn out that dredging is a solution, but right now it's kind of. For your purpose, it's theoretical. The task force decided that dredging. I mean, aside from the financial part. Would be the solution,
Right,
right?
Yeah.
But we weren't gonna afford that right now, therefore try adaptive management to see if something other than dredging or other than dam removal could solve things. If not, we'd have to go to something else, but I don't.
I'm comfortable
Yeah.
with that, putting
Okay.
it in the part of the
Yeah, yeah.
context of what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think one of the
Because saying
additional,
something we can't even.
yeah,
You don't talk about it.
one
You
of
can't-
the,
So
one of the
perhaps
other
that
reasons,
was a wrong way to approach it.
one of the other reasons I think should. An asterisk of why dredging was sidelined is, you know, there was one bid during COVID, so I think that the whole idea in my mind was tainted because of that one bid during COVID.
I suspect if that was a ballpark, could probably still be, I'm not gonna argue.
So-
that it could be.
I think we should just
Yeah.
move on from this.
Yeah, I
We
didn't
talked
expect
about
to
it.
get hung up
Let's move
on
on.
this part, but this was the easiest one.
Yeah.
Folks, your audio just cut out.
Because I think there is a natural tendency for this committee to fall back into relitigating what the last task force did, and I'm looking at it, no, they made up their mind, this is what we're doing. And let's see how it goes.
So let's talk about the adaptive management process.
So I think everybody probably knows what it is if you've read that DOI manual. So the first takeaway on this first slide, by the way, is there is a well-established process. So we don't have to invent it. We just can decide to use it or not. And then we have to adapt that well-established process to our specific needs for this committee, how we play it out. But I will say, having done adaptive management, I'm currently doing this on a large project with the trustees. It's a good process. It works very, very well. And it's a good way to create transparent, structured decision-making. And it's very well suited not only for the issues we have on the pond, but it's well suited for the committee itself. And it lines up with Massachusetts guidance too. So they'll know exactly how we reached our plan. You can read this. I'm gonna kind of skip over it. But I guess it's not exactly trial and error. It's a little bit more structured process than trial and error, but it is a learning-based process. So you do some steps. Those steps are founded on a well understanding of the processes, and then you see how that went, and then you adapt going over some time period. I will say one of the things that I'm, as a committee member, gonna try to repeatedly contribute to is it's very important that this committee end up with a clear definition of success. And that definition will be founded on what are called functional goals. And then those functional goals get translated to specific metrics that we go out and monitor. But if the committee ends up being vague about what success is, we're going to have a lot of problems later. So just throw that idea out. It's just, if you go to the DOI manual, they have 9 steps. I just simplified it a little bit. So you can consider it a 6-step process, define the problem. You create models, which is really just looking at the data you have available, translating that into some type of conceptual understanding of what's going on. Bill gave us a little bit of a head start there. Then you define your objectives and your metrics. They have to be, like I said, specific, measurable, achievable, results-oriented, and time-fixed. You look at the alternatives that are available to you. As you mentioned, the Massachusetts Guide actually goes into the alternatives in quite a bit of detail. And then we do have some experience on the pond. And then you develop a monitoring plan, and then you go into implementation. And implementation will be over 5 years after the plan's approved, and it will have some degree of learning involved. So we'll do something, see how it goes. And success, part of the definition of success is the process itself working? Are you able to reasonably do something, reach a conclusion, and within the money that's available from the town, move forward to the next step? Different, I don't want to revisit the dredging idea, but different from a solution, which is a one-time large capital investment solution. This is more of a maintenance annual cost type of outcome. So it is consistent. I did go through a very detailed assessment of the task force findings. you guys were on it, so I'm not gonna spend much time, but this did appear to meet what was intended. And then how do we apply it? So this is, this is my first stabs. I don't think I'm saying, oh, this is exactly what we should do, but I wanted to try and put it in perspective for this committee. So clearly, we're going to create a pond management plan, whether we do that mostly ourselves and then bring a consultant in, or we just hand it over to a consultant, but a plan will be prepared. And that plan will go through these sort of first 5 steps are really leading towards the preparation of the plan. And then we go to procurement at step 6. And then you go to the actual implementation, which is step 7. So, and we have, I think, 5 years. I have 2030 there, but I think we're, Chris talked, I'm still a little confused. It could be 2032 in the final task force report, but I've always interpreted 5 years from the approval of the plan. It's sort of
Right.
but not beyond 2032. So that's the process end of it. The committee part, which, like I said, I do have some success with experience, but it's been pretty successful. But it's really about how the committee makes decisions. And part of adaptive management process is to go through a structured decision-making process. And I think it will become pretty apparent if we give it a try, do a couple of decisions, it'll be really clear. But for a committee like this, part of the importance of it is it keeps the committee on track, right? Moving forward towards define a decision. What's the objectives? What are the alternatives? It's supports consensus making so the committee can vote. And most importantly, it's very transparent. So if somebody says, why did you decide to go there? Well, here's the steps we went through. It's very, very clear. So it's a great process. It does require some facilitation. That could be, whoever, or once we hit a groove, I think it will just work on its own. And then the third part of this is really the plan itself. And, I don't want to be presumptuous on the right-hand side that I laid the plan out by any means. I just went to the guide that started with the Massachusetts guide and said, these are going to be the logical chapters because I'm only trying to relate them to our activities. So on the right-hand side, these are, probably going to be the likely chapters we would have in a plan. And then on the left-hand side are what are the processes we sort of need to go through. And that these processes, if people agree on the approach and agree on, what we're trying to specifically achieve here, typically what I would do would then translate that into a specific Gantt chart that we would use on a meeting basis, just to track the activities and our success and to make sure things like, we need 2 months to get that procurement. We can build that kind of detail into it. That's the last slide. So that's the process. And I hope we do it. I think people will be happy with it.
Any comments or questions about that?
Basically, the scientific approach.
It's a great process. And the only thing I would add, and I'm only throwing this out there here, is one of the most time-consuming part of this process is that number 2. So we have quite a bit of data going from 1999. Then we had another group of data in 2011. Some of that data is water quality data. Some of that data is sediment data. Some of that data is habitat monitoring data. And it's a lot of effort to, you guys started, but it's a lot of effort to really understand that data, to compile it, reach some conclusions, and then develop what we would call a conceptual model. Now, a conceptual model doesn't have to be a high-end computer program. It can be, a couple of text items. This is what's happening here. This is what's happening here. But that process is usually the bigger part of the time effort. I've spent a lot of time doing that. So I'm happy to work with I've had you in mind because I'm looking at you. Work with somebody to go through that and then present that to the committee.
Didn't know your hand was raised.
I'm only saying that, normally that might take a lot of months, and because we got a head start, we can condense that down.
Sure.
But it does have to be detailed. So that's, anyway, so I looked at you because I thought maybe I've done a lot of it, but I don't want to be it really needs to be a few of us looking through it, but huge head start to do that. The last thing I would say is ideally we would have a GIS web map set up, or at least a map service set up. And then when all the future we develop the benchmark information and every monitoring that we do going forward, that data goes automatically into GIS, and we can do a lot of the assessment right there.
Sure.
See,
And that would include near maps, by the way. So that's the other thing I wanted to talk to you about, what is the near map subscription, because those can be georeferenced and things like plant coverage, but we can get that automatically off those maps.
Yep.
So, okay, I'll stop there.
How much time do you think that's gonna take in people hours and to get that modeling done?
Because I will, in all honesty, I have spent probably several hundred hours of my own time. And I did that because my personal interest, but also I was drafting very detailed questions to the task force. And rather than just ask the question and say, I'm complaining, I said, well, here's my question and here's 100 pages for why I'm asking that question. So could you please answer it? So I got a head start. But I think if you agreed to help and we had maybe one other person, it would probably be 8 hours. It would start with me sharing everything I got, but then 8 hours, probably over 2 or 3 get-togethers. I did have an outside citizen that I thought would be great if they could come in and give us a little bit of a reality check, but I haven't pursued it beyond seeing if he's interested or not, but he's got a PhD in evolutionary pond biology and he's pretty
I
smart.
think
So,
biology is certainly the field that we're lacking the most of.
and so he's also my next door
I think
neighbor.
that would be.
So if he was interested.
Somebody, no, great.
So anyway, if
So,
the committee says we want that guy and he agrees, he would sit in with us. That's all I'm saying. But 8 hours and then present it to the committee.
Thanks for doing all that, Dan. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
so how do we feel about moving forward with this particular process? I think it makes sense. And then the next step would be the outside work. And then we need to, looking at the time frame, our meeting schedule of meeting every month is, I don't think, going to help our cause to get things running and off the ground. I think that we need, for the first couple, 3 months, to meet more often so that we can get this work done, and then we'll reach a point, hopefully by the summertime, where it's like, okay, we've got all this major work done. Now we can just meet monthly and kind of, or however we feel, but to get things rolling from there. How are people feeling about that?
I agree.
I think every 2 weeks would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Every 2 weeks.
People a chance to get something done.
I do too. I'll just make a comment, which I think that meeting more often raises a risk about maybe not everyone not being able to make every meeting. So I would say that's the only thing, so.
You also could do, if you have specific tasks, you can have subgroups, and if they meet, you still technically have to
They're open
have,
meeting.
exactly.
If
But
you have less than.
If we have less than quorum, yeah.
It's
Can you do
interesting,
that?
I followed up on that
Yeah.
actually, and I think that there's an issue coming up with the select board next week. There was some sort of complaint about something, about a small group getting together, so I think. Even as a small group, even though it's a quorum, I believe you still have to.
If we formally
Yeah,
assign a
take
task, it
those.
has to
Yeah.
be subject to
Like,
open meeting
like
law.
Stan and Melissa.
So it's just that just means it has to be posted
Correct.
and there have to be minutes.
Yeah,
And public has to be invited.
And, yeah.
Yeah,
So if we were to meet to start to, that would get posted?
it would have to
48
be,
hours.
yeah.
So
I
how would
think 2
that
people.
be? That means we gotta go someplace to do
So
that?
48 hours, I would, we would ask Rose to have Karen post it.
Correct.
And then would we just schedule this room, for example?
But if we have 2-person,
Here,
sorry, Carlene.
Go ahead.
it's okay. If we have 2-person working groups, I don't think we have to post that. I mean, we
If
need
we
to
formally
be able.
assign it, no, if it's a formal assignment, it has to be official.
So I would have agreed with you before today, Carlene, but I think given what's going on with this issue that's coming up with the select board, that there was a question about people not following the open meeting law, that I think I think it's in our best interest to have minutes and post the meeting and do it that way.
And we can see how they resolve it too,
Yeah,
because they may
Right.
Yeah,
resolve it.
that's a lot of bureaucracy just to get some work done.
Yes.
Yeah, it is, and I totally agree with you.
Also,
But-
I mean, I'm fine either way, just as long as we know, because I think it will
Right.
be just as fast, but the content that you create that's sort of a work in process, does each of that have to get posted?
So I was gonna say, drafts don't necessarily need to. So I'm thinking of scope of work. That's probably one of the first things you guys are gonna have to do is for the request for proposals have a scope of work. And so if you, let's say 3 people from this group volunteer to draft that, let's say it's just a shared document on SharePoint and you're separately you're working collaboratively. You don't need to post anything about that, but if you're saying, oh, let's meet at this cafe, the 3 of us to work on this together, that's when it's.
Are you sure of that?
That's, I mean, I talked to Dealey about this and we talked to, like the town clerk and everything, like we
Okay,
So-
so you can collaboratively work on a document
only up to 3 though, less than a quorum.
less than a form.
But again, if you were all gonna meet together as like a subgroup,
Physically.
exactly. But even like a virtual call, I think,
But I mean, if they worked independently and put it
on
together
one
SharePoint,
document, then you're
If
fine.
we had, let's say a slide presentation, and that's marked work in process, does that have to be formally posted, or do we wait till we're finished? And then we can say, now we're posting.
So let's say you draft something, you could bring it to the bigger group at the next meeting and discuss it there. You don't have to post the drafts, but if it's something, I would say final documents would be, and someone can request something that's not finalized, and we would have to share it. But typically you wouldn't need to share a draft.
Okay,
Yeah, I hope that makes sense.
it does.
So just keep in mind, the number.
All right, so we would have a subgroup, we would meet. We would post it, so we'd schedule it, but ideally meet here if it's
Well,
available.
any place that's publicly available, so a library room.
Or Zoom.
I mean, this has the advantage, we got all this other visual stuff too, so that's
So
good.
if the
It
public,
doesn't have to be a hybrid.
Or Zoom.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah, so we could have a Zoom.
Yeah, I mean, I think subgroups
Carefully,
could be on
yeah.
Zoom,
Okay.
yeah.
And you don't have to do these subgroups, it's just a suggestion, or if you want more frequent, everyone meets. Then just let me know, cause then I'll have to, I think, adjust
I
things.
think
as
we
well.
need both. I mean, I think that if you guys are willing to meet, then I think we also need to, because that's kind of,
So
that's a little bit in the background, so to speak. You're like putting together all that information, but we also, I think, need to start moving ahead as far as,
Agreed.
what are the issues? What is our plan? What are we agreeing?
it seems to me we need what they're doing first.
Well, I think the statement of, if you look at that list, the first thing is the statement of the problem, and I think that's something we need to work on
Yes.
as a committee.
But, okay,
So could I make one, and we've talked about this, so I don't want to blindside you here, but if I can just throw this up. How do I share
The
it?
next one that
The green arrow at the bottom, you should be able to share.
Let's see if this comes up. Okay, my recommendation, which I have made, is if we agreed to the process we just agreed to, then we take the step of investing some time to develop a detailed working Gantt chart, basically. Probably takes about half an hour to populate and then revisit it every meeting for a few minutes, but this will lay out the schedule for the whole process. I laid it out for 2 years, so that's a pretty long time. But anyway, I think this would be, it certainly doesn't have to be me, anybody could be doing this for the committee, but something like this will be very valuable.
yeah, it's great.
To keep it on track, so let's stop there.
Now, I thought you two were gonna be working on the problem. Is that the thing you're gonna be presenting to us? No?
we're working on the history.
No, just the
Biology.
step 2, that
Conceptual.
getting the data together, getting this conceptual.
Oh, I see,
model,
conceptual
these are
model.
the-
Okay. So we have to work on the problem. Okay.
Yeah, the committee as whole makes all the decisions.
Oh, I know that. I just wondered how we get to discuss the problem.
Right.
Yeah, the subgroup was only to
Yeah.
expedite that one
Got it.
step rather than
Yeah.
all of us get around and do it. We can do it and then just present it to you and answer questions.
Well, how hard is it going to be to define the problem?
Well, I think, well, it's tricky, you know, you can say the general problem is, you know, removing invasive and nuisance species. But, you know, there's that Western Cove, you know, there's the spatial.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, it's gonna be various.
There's, you know, nuisance, you know, concerned about, what about nuisance vegetation that's natural?
That's how I mentioned.
What,
that,
you know, you mentioned that, so there's a lot of detail, I think, in working out, you know, what is it really in the interest of.
Well, but here's a question, I'm curious, not saying this is a challenge. But if the main problem is invasive and nuisance vegetation, then we can work out, if that is the problem, maybe there's more. But if that is the problem, then we can work out the other elements beneath it. You know, what types of vegetation do we want to tackle, where do we want to tackle it, et cetera. But is there more that I'm missing about what it is?
And I think that's what this process will bring out. And
What you're gonna be doing?
yeah, because like, for example, because I've personally sort of gone through this for this project, but I came up with 11 specific issues. All right, so here's an issue that I haven't heard you say. The test data we have, the water quality test data shows in our deeper pools, we have oxygen stratification. So we have very low, almost hypoxic conditions in some of those areas. As time goes on, that will be a water quality issue. That's an issue right there. That's like a type of it's very specific issue indicated by the data. Part of that issue is a function of the fact, which you did bring up, while we volumetrically exchange.
Yep.
Right, we differentially don't do that across the surface. So we have areas, it's almost like a lot of that, it's just the data indicates a lot of that water is just flowing across the top and out, but it's not mixing what's below that.
Okay.
It would lead to say, if we all agree that that's an issue, we say that's an issue here, what you brought up before, is that a place where we should consider areas? Some kind of mixing as a method. Is it an issue?
Okay.
Is it a model that
Yep.
shows an issue that would lead to a goal, which would lead to a solution? The model part is just to get all that out. So at a level of detail that the task force did not do.
So so back to this question, if you're doing the model and you're going to be presenting to us what you think are the problems.
We're going to present the conditions and whether they're a problem or not. Yes, to the sense that we have two charges. One is recreational and we have ecological health. So what we're talking here is the ecological health. So it would be a problem. It would be an issue in the sense that it's impacting the ecological health of the pond. But it would be a very specific, like you were talking about, you got to really look at the details. And under an adaptive management plan, we will do this now because we have data from 1999 up to almost the current. And then each monitoring process, when we do something, you also get a lot of monitoring data where you say, well, you know, I thought that was an oxygen problem over there, but maybe it's not. Maybe we just got more data here. You know, and it's like, I don't want to make it get too far in the weeds, but the process warrants people creating a conceptual model.
So I'm back to the original problem for me, Dan, and I'm being a little dense, I know. I don't mean to be, but I am. So if this whole group has to name the problem, how do we name the problem? Like, for example, the oxygen, the low oxygen in the deep hole, if we didn't even think about it beforehand, don't we have to know? In other words,
and that would be what we would do, because
that's my point. So we have to, so do we have to hear from you first before we can name the problem?
Yeah, but there's other things on the committee that you can be thinking about.
Say it more time. I didn't hear you.
I think it could be iterative.
Yes, but in fact, we can't move forward until we see what you have. Can we?
Well, yes, there are many steps that this committee has to go to. So if we
lost.
No, I think in my mind, what they're doing is they're all the information that has been gathered from the different reports. You guys are putting that together in a readable format, basically for us. And what we need to do is we need to figure out, okay, so what is the plan? What do we want to get started on? We know it's to get rid of, basically, to get rid of invasives and nuisance weeds, okay? So then the question is, well, where do we want to do that?
Well, I disagree a little
Okay.
bit. That's my point. So I think if you go back to the process, we just follow the steps. But because there's a lot to do, some of those steps can be done simultaneously. For example, we can be developing a conceptual model, step 2. Somebody could be lining up some of this procurement stuff, right? So we can get that going.
I don't see it that way. I think we have to, I think we have to first, we have to hear from you what you think are the issues that we may be missing. If, for example, oxygen is one and there's others I don't know about. So we can name what the problems are. Otherwise, how do we go for, I mean, we don't look.
And I think in
until we know what the
fairness,
problems are.
to do that in a transparent way, we should have the subgroup, whatever you want to call it. We should get together. I think it would take about 8 hours, so I don't think we're going to sit down for 8 hours straight. So that's a few meetings. And that, and that would be summarized in about 20 slides, of which I have supported by about 300 if there's questions. And that those 10 or 20 slides summarize the conditions. Then we would sit down, okay, we all agree, these are the issues we have.
These are the problems
Like I said, I've come up with 11 myself.
I think conditions from which we define the problem.
Right, but I don't think it's reasonable. We have 2 choices. We can just hire a consultant now, spend another 150,000 and wait 6 months. Or we could take the data we already have and with some internal effort on the committee basis, building on, my effort. I'm not saying that would be the end of it. I think we should hire a consultant. I think we should do most of this plan ourselves personally, and then bring a consultant in to review and provide comment.
I think there's enough here that we need to work on multiple streams all at the same time, because otherwise we're just gonna be not getting anything done. So I think we need to start with this, and if there's something else we can do, like, how do we start with looking at a consultant? We should do as much as we can simultaneously.
The spreadsheet, that Gantt chart I showed, if we spend the half an hour so populating it, then all those pieces will fill in. Because we will have all the things that need to be done, and then we can just say who's gonna do them and when are they gonna be done.
So,
I'm sorry. Quick question, Dan. Give me another example. I love what you've done. I mean, you mentioned, for example, oxygen, mentioned vegetation. Give me another example of a.
Phosphorus concentration in sediment.
Yeah, phosphorus.
I don't want to hijack your meeting here, so.
so I have one thing to say there. So if you guys are gonna meet, okay? Will you be able to have that information together before our next meeting?
Right.
So say if we, say,
Next meeting.
that's what we need to decide now. I think we need to decide when can you guys get together? Can you get that information together? And based on that, we'll schedule our next.
Let's do it this way. When would you, assuming we wanted your input before the next meeting or at the next meeting, when would be a comfortable time to have the next meeting from your point of view? 3 weeks from now? 2
Well,
weeks?
if it's a subgroup, I can't speak to.
I'm out of town next week.
So, I mean, I think it would take. I've spent a couple 100 hours. I think we as a subgroup can spend about 8 hours. That 8 hours would be spread out over some time that people could accommodate. And then at that point, we would be ready to present it. But I'm suggesting to you that you don't stop work until you just have that, because there are other activities that we can be doing.
Can you put that?
As a committee. Which slide?
The slide with the layout.
This is what you're calling it.
Summary 1 of the Gantt chart.
What is the Gantt chart?
I should flow up the stairs.
So I think also in the interim, I think we've been exposed to a lot of reports and sources of information before this meeting, and I think we all have varying levels of how much we were able to absorb. Yeah, and so we could really take some time in the interim going through that adaptive management plan again, going through the generic draft EIR, and the 2025 report, the alternatives analysis, that old 2012 report. I mean, I think we could all spend more time getting more familiar with the documents that you were available to us for this meeting.
I agree with you, we should do that, but I might be a waste of time for us to go through all that through us all here again. I'd rather see what you folks come up with.
Right. Exactly.
In a hard copy, boil it down for us and give us what you think are the major concerns that we need to address.
Yes, and I think that would take about 8 hours
I would love it if that's it.
spread out. Well, only, like I said, I'm not,
Sounds to me like he's done.
I'm not trying to say that I'm a consultant, but what I did do was I took all those reports and put them into a coherent, instead of a bunch of little discrete slices, I put them into a coherent package and I organized them kind of the way the pond management plan's organized, right? So you can see it, and then I tried to summarize that. But that shouldn't be me. That should be, you should be saying, yes, I see what you're saying here. I agree with you, or I don't agree.
Carly has her hand raised. Sorry, she's had it up for a while.
Sorry, Carlene.
Oh, that's okay. It's my fault for not being there. I'm not sure why these two and this subcommittee are supposed to be doing this massive amount of work so that the rest of us can digest it. Why can't Chris divide that across every committee member and everyone comes forth with their little area of expertise? Seems like a lot to put on
I think that we'll probably
these
have.
two.
I would only say because I've done so much of it already that we can just
Get that, Dan.
out, or we can use it, one or the other. I don't know that this committee as a whole will be able to take the time to drill down to, like, why did that oxygen reading in September 1st, 2011, what does that mean? The fact
That is not our job.
After Hurricane Irene, what did that mean?
That is not our job. We are not scientists and we are not equipped to look
Well-
down at why the nitrogen level on a given day. Our job is that's just too technical, and that's what we're hiring someone for. No, there are no biologists on this group. I think to move this forward, there should be a division of work across the entire group, and we should come forth with our micro reports with an idea of and then decide what our priorities are. I think that's a lot to ask, to drill down to levels of that sort of minutia when we don't have any expertise, most of us. I don't think
Yeah,
any of us.
I will say that a lot of it was, the interpretation was done by the consultants at the time, so you don't like literally have to drill down. But
I think there should be a better division of labor.
Well,
I just
hey,
we
it
could
sounds like Dan is really close to having what we need for the model, and he just needs someone to work with to complete the process.
Okay.
That sounds very efficient to me too.
And by doing it in a small group, we're not running afoul of the, open meeting laws.
Well, we are,
That,
we still are.
well, sorry, but if we keep it to a very small number, then it can be manageable as opposed to involving all.
Right,
of us.
right.
Absolutely efficient.
Yeah.
it's,
So
I want to be clear, it's not about me, and I don't even really necessarily want to be doing this, but I'm just saying, then the alternative is committee has to say, we're going to hire a consultant.
Right.
That's going to be 2 months, and then we're going to spend a fair amount of money to that consultant to do all that work.
Well, it sounds like we're close to having something that's usable, and it seems to me, even though maybe we could be working on other stuff, we're so early in our setup that we don't know exactly what that other stuff is.
No, we don't. I have no idea what
So,
we were.
so I say, you two figure out when you can get together and produce this thing, and if it's 3 weeks from now, we'll have our next meeting in 3 or 4 weeks, and then we'll have something substantive to deal with. Okay, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I think
How are
that's
you
it.
feeling about that, Alyssa?
I think I kind of like that. So rather than setting up another meeting right now,
Okay.
as I said, I still think it's a good idea for everybody who's not, follow this in great detail to keep reviewing documents. I think we could work together, and I think when we have an idea of when the next meeting should be, you could do a doodle poll or.
Well, the only problem I have with that is,
Leave it as a default.
We do
Leave it
have
as a
one
default.
set up.
In a month.
And
In a month
next
from now.
month,
Yeah, leave
correct.
it as a default.
Do we, yes. You
So,
guys
so keep that.
keep that, and if we can if it works out that we can do something earlier, then yes, we'll do a doodle poll and
And I'll need to know
Okay.
ASAP because I need to know if the room's available
Right.
and there's a lot that goes behind the scenes. And then the agenda and all that with it. So just keep that in mind too.
I love that.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And I think there'll be plenty of other opportunities for subgroups to do other stuff
Yes.
Yes,
in the future.
Yes,
That
for
Once
sure.
we'll be balancing out effort.
And I will say, you know, I mean, I have an interest in drilling down to the details, so I'm gonna temper that, but if you're just at the higher level, if you read the 2011 report, which really built off, probably, I think the most important report was the 1999 ACT report, right? You will have a very good idea. And then you add to that reading the Massachusetts guidance document. Those three things will get you very, very far.
Has the 1999 report been posted or available? I
It
don't
was
remember
posted on
seeing
the stewardship site. I asked to see it moved over here, so it
Put
would be
it
more
on
convenient.
YouTube. You can put it on our website. On our
How do you
one.
find our website? I was
That's a
confused.
very good question.
It's not one of the town committees and
Right.
it's not under the natural resources.
It is, it's under
It's
the
an
Natural
NRC.
Resources Subcommittee, and there have been some changes to it.
There was an issue with the link. I mean, I could see it today, but you all can.
I was just looking for it during the meeting.
I would honestly, if possible, vote for it to be instead of under a sub, go to
Yeah,
natural
the task
resources.
force, the task
subcommittee.
force was one of the town committees,
Yeah.
even though it
I think
wasn't.
it's
Why
it'd be
can't we
easier-
be?
Easier for people to find.
It's still
I
there. The
agree.
task force is still listed as a town committee.
And it will stay there only because of all the information on
Yeah,
the
right.
site, but
Is-
if
is-
we can do that, that would be really.
Anyway, the question was access to the 1999 report. If you can get it moved over and you can just send us a link to where our page
Yeah.
is now.
Because I found that to be extremely useful, and what he,
The
what they-
2011 is the watershed management
And I'm
plan?
mindful that it is
Yeah,
5 o'clock,
okay.
everybody.
Okay, let's. I'll be quick.
Good point. I agree. I went back and forth with Rose a couple times
Yep.
as to where it is and.
I have
can't
certain
find it.
controls on the webpage, but I can't control
Right,
some of it, so then I have to communicate with our communications manager and all that. So, but I will send you the link.
And will you look into seeing if we can have like Warner's Pond Task Force, the way it was? It was considered, you would look under, you know how you have committees and they're alphabetical? And if you would look under, the W's, you would find the Warner's Pond Task.
Oh,
Force.
right, under here.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
You would find Warner's Pond
That's
Task
the
Force.
one.
So we're hopeful that you could put Warner's Pond Management Committee there as well.
Okay, I'll see what I can do.
And if you can just absorb all of the stuff that was on the task force.
Well, she has a direct link from
Okay.
to the task force on that page, if that's sufficient. Okay. Oh, any other questions? Are we good as to how we're moving forward? We're moving forward that you two guys are going to meet. You are going to,
Your neighbor.
Yeah, and I would suggest a meeting which doesn't conflict with this, where we go through, it sounds like we agree that the process is good, right?
right,
Okay, we
right.
agree on that, then I would have a meeting dedicated to filling out this, I took it off, but that Gantt chart. Because I think that will lay out everything going forward.
So we need your information first
And,
before we do that.
I can do it, I can send it out to the group, because I mean, I just gave a first stab at doing it, but I don't necessarily
I think for the Gantt chart, that's just something if Dan shares it with a group. It doesn't have to require the details and the specifics of this pond, it's just the process.
It's purely a process, yeah,
Okay.
and it just really tells us who's doing what when,
Okay,
and what milestones we want to achieve. Like, I mean, doing something active this summer is looking kind of hard. schedule, so this will tell you that.
But it'd be good to get our feet wet, so.
Yes.
yeah, okay, all right, so you'll share that then. And we can start.
I gave you, I will give it to you and let you,
Okay, so let me go back. So what's gonna happen is you guys are gonna get together. Okay, and then you will let us know when you're when you're done or close to being done so that we could, if need be, set up another meeting prior to our April meeting,
I'm
okay?
just saying that
So
separate from what we're doing, you could have a meeting anytime now to go
No,
over.
No, Dan, one thing at a time. Do yours first and then let us see what you have, then we can move forward, I think. That's the only way for us to do
Right,
it.
okay, to move forward in the decision making, but not move forward in the project management.
But we don't know we don't know what we're doing individually until we can see what we prioritize, right?
Well,
is it okay for Dan?
how about I just
to share?
distribute it and then you can decide from there. Because I think it'll be. Yeah, I mean, we're just a step on the
Right,
activities.
right. I think you should share that with all of us.
All right, I'll share it
So that
in.
we can take a look at it and and be a little bit more cognizant of what.
Yeah,
it is.
and it's not populated
Right.
in terms of dates and,
Right,
but, and certainly if somebody wanted to change the tasks, that's fine too. I just started it. I will send it out to you in PDF. And then if people want to adopt it, I did it in Excel versus like a special.
can we
document.
use the SharePoint?
Why not send it in Excel?
Yes,
No, I don't care.
but again.
It's easy for us to mess
can't
around
have
with it.
comment
Yeah, if people want to
edits
do it
and
in
stuff.
Excel, so I'll send both. files.
More than
Just want to look at it.
3 people
At a time or in total?
Total.
total, yeah. So he can send it out, everyone can look at it, and then at the next meeting you can discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that would, instead of, we can't have everyone.
No back and forth.
Exactly.
Okay. All right.
And I will point out there are some example procurement documents in the SharePoint that I put in there. From the dredging feasibility study and the 2012 pond management plan. Or watershed plan. So if you're wondering what might request for proposals look like, what did their scope of work look like? Some of those are there. So if you're not, if you want to read up on that, I would say that would be probably helpful, since you all will probably need to get going in the procurement process soon. It might be helpful to see some examples.
That's good, thank you.
So just FYI.
Thank you, Rose. That's helpful.
Yeah, and it was just to clarify, but Dan could send me these other draft thoughts.
Yes, he can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, if I just get the contact information.
We're done.
You wanna, I guess I got your email.
Okay, so if
Phone
there's
number.
no other questions, then this meeting is adjourned.